Good afternoon and welcome to today's presentation, Commercial Vehicle Crash Reconstruction. In today's webinar, Mr. Ashton will discuss understanding commercial vehicle evidence, legal aspects of evidence collection, commercial vehicle brakes, and how electronic control modules can benefit your case. To give you a little background about our presenter, Stephen Ashton, he has reconstructed over 250 crashes involving passenger vehicles, tractor-trailers, pedestrians, motorcycles, and a shopping cart. He has experience providing evidence on the following issues: impact speed analysis, time distance analysis, point of perception, seatbelt usage, and point of impact placement. Mr. Ashton worked at the Forest Park Police Department for 28 years. He is currently the president of the Ohio Traffic Accident Reconstruction Association, which serves as a forum for education and mentoring. Attendees will require a passcode. The word for today is crash. During the Q&A session, we will ask that you enter this passcode into the Q&A widget for CLE reporting purposes. The Q&A is located to the left of your screen. Please remember that if you are applying for CLE credit, you must log onto your computer as yourself and stay for the full 60 minutes. You are also required to complete the survey at the end of the program. Tomorrow morning, we will send out an email with a link to the archive recording of the webinar. The slides can be downloaded from the resource list to the left of your screen. Thank you all for attending today, and Stephen, the presentation is now turned over to you.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate the introduction, and welcome everybody. Emily provided a very nice bio of me. One thing I wanted to preface before we start right away, I'm sure that I got a lot of probably head shakes when it came to investigating a case involving a shopping cart. Let me preface that by, it wasn't your typical shopping cart. It's one of those from a commercial establishment where flowers were on it. Shopping cart was pushed into a roadway, struck by a vehicle. Subsequently, all the trays fell off, and motorcycle actually ran over the trays, went down, and both the driver and the occupant of the motorcycle were killed. So it's not your typical shopping cart bang in the parking lot. So just wanted to make sure you understood that. In any case, as Emily said, I'm a retired police lieutenant from Forest Park, which is in Hamilton County, Ohio. I was there for 28 years. I've been retired about 8 years. I was the accident reconstructionist on the department from 1982 until I retired in 2008. So I have a few years under my belt. I am what's referred to as a O.T.A.R.A accredited reconstructionist. For those who aren't familiar with O.T.A.R.A, it's an acronym that stands for the Accreditation Commission for Traffic Accident Reconstruction. In a nutshell, in the 70s, there were a lot of clients, I guess you would call them, that had a concern as far as what the knowledge of your typical reconstructionist was. So they decided, they meaning a group of police officers that were reconstructionists as well as engineers, got together. They formulated an exam that kind of gave a basis of knowledge. The exam, in order to take the accreditation exam, you have to be accepted. You have to be a reconstructionist, first of all, and there's several levels in order to become a reconstructionist. Once you take the exam, and if and when you pass the exam, you become accredited, and just like many other professions, you have to maintain that accreditation by taking 80 continuing education units over a 5-year period. As Emily indicated, I'm the president of a group that teaches accident reconstruction, so that's one way that I'm able to keep up with those CEUs. I am a qualified expert. I've been through O.T.A.R.A hearings. I've never had evidence excluded in O.T.A.R.A. I specialize in commercial vehicles and motorcycles. I'm a former motor officer and have ridden motorcycles all my life, so I have that under my belt as well. I was trained in advanced commercial vehicle accident reconstruction through the Institute of Police Training and Management, which is out of Jacksonville, Florida. For those of you who don't know, there are 2 schools throughout the United States that pretty much are the leaders in accident reconstruction training, and those are the Northwestern University up in Evanston, Illinois, and IPTM, which is on the campus of the University of North Florida in Jacksonville. Since handing over the CV to Emily, I've updated my CV somewhat. I've reconstructed probably over 300 400 cases at this point. I have as far as my education, I have a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice from the University of Cincinnati, as well as some credits toward Masters through the Certified Law Enforcement Executive Program and the Police Executive Leadership College. So once we get into accident reconstruction, we're looking at commercial vehicles. The next slide you're going to see is a video. The video is a demonstration of a commercial vehicle crash. It actually involves two particular types of commercial vehicles, and that's something I want you to note is that there are more than just one type of commercial vehicle. There's more than just your tractor trailer. There are wreckers. There are anything that's over 10,001 pounds. If you have a dump truck pulling a trailer with a large piece of construction equipment, it's a commercial vehicle and it falls under the same guidelines as a commercial vehicle. So let's take a look at this video.
Han ska laga en snutt där så sen. Det fick jag på. Det får du på video. Stefan.
I helvete så skjedde her. I helvete gjorde her.
Okay, hopefully you can see it a little clearer than mine. No, this is not one of the cases that I worked. Much too cold for me. But in any case, you certainly have some issues that are involved in this particular crash. The way the vehicle was towed, you certainly have some weather conditions and whatnot. But again, the main thing is we had two commercial vehicles involved in this crash, not just one. I don't know. I can't tell you other than this was pulled from YouTube. We saw the driver of the wrecker escape. The driver of the commercial vehicle, I honestly don't know if it was occupied or not. Okay, here. Okay, here we go. So I'm not sure how many of the clients here have actually hired a reconstructionist to work a commercial vehicle personal injury case, but these are some of the guidelines, I would call them, as to who to call and when to call an expert involving a commercial vehicle. Needless to say, you want to contact an expert as soon as possible. Many reasons, but one of the main reasons is you kind of want to treat a crash scene like this like a homicide scene, which I've also worked, in that you have some short-lived evidence and you have some long-lived evidence. That short-lived evidence, I assure you, will disappear very, very quickly and becomes an issue as to trying to recreate the crash if you're missing some of the evidence. So you want to document and preserve that scene. I am on call for a number of trucking companies where I have received a call late at night. Just recently, I was in the grocery store and received a call standing there with my wife to respond to a fatal truck accident up in northern Ohio. Took me a couple hours. By the time I got there, it was dark, but I was fortunate enough that one of the representing attorneys was still at the scene with the driver of our commercial vehicle. I was able to talk to the driver. He actually brought me back to the crash scene. Even though it was dark, I was at least able to get just a general idea of what my scene looked like so that when I came back the next day in the daylight, I was able to collect the evidence. As a matter of fact, I even beat the State Patrol. The next day, excuse me, I think they arrived there just shortly after I completed mapping the scene. Vehicle inspections. With commercial vehicles, they're, I don't know if I want to call them unique, but they're in that guideline where the carriers want to get these commercial vehicles back on the road as soon as possible. The longer these vehicles sit, the less money they're making on them. So it's pretty imperative that you contact a reconstructionist as soon as possible before these vehicles are allowed to leave the impound lot or what have you. Just again, so we can document the evidence. ECM downloads. The ECM stands for Electronic Control Module.
Why wouldn't you do it online? Why not? Let's say if line 1 rings, I can tell who it is.
I'm sorry.
Again, you just
can you still hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Sorry about that. I heard a little bit of a background here. I wasn't sure if we were still online. In any case, again, I was talking about the ECM download. ECMs differ from the airbag control modules in passenger cars. You don't have airbags in commercial vehicles, therefore you don't have airbag control modules, at least not to my knowledge, at least not at this point. The ECM is going to give you a lot of data, which we're going to talk about here in my presentation just a little bit later. You want to have your expert contact witnesses as soon as possible. Just like a homicide scene, any kind of a crime scene, your witnesses, the sooner you try and talk to them, the better. It's not uncommon for witnesses to forget information the further away from the date of the accident. It's not uncommon for witnesses to move and totally lose track of the location of the witnesses. So imperative, again, that we try and get these witnesses as soon as possible. Police reports and photos. Obviously, police reports is kind of a no-brainer. We need to get copies of the police reports as soon as possible. Now, I'm not sure how it works in the other states, but in the state of Ohio, being a former police officer, I can tell you that we are required from the date that we take the crash report to file that report with the state within 5 days. When you have a multi-vehicle crash, I'm working one now involving 4 passenger cars and 2 tractor trailers, your typical investigator is going to take more than those 5 days to get that report filed. So what he's going to do is he's going to file a cursory report, and then he's going to work on an addendum to that report. So you may get a cursory report that may not have all the information in it that is necessary to reconstruct this case. So it's incumbent that your expert be in touch with the investigating officer to see if there's any kind of pending supplemental reports that will be coming down the road and at what point. Other experts, you want to, back to photos. I should also mention it's not uncommon, besides the police photos, everybody anymore has a smartphone on them. You want to try and get as many witnesses that may have taken photos from their smartphones. I've gone back to a scene weeks later and been on scene mapping and had witnesses come up and say, hey, are you here regarding such and such a crash? Yes, I am. Okay. Well, I got video of that crash, and that video has actually been an important piece of my case. So, again, photos, we need to try and get as many photos as we can. The other experts, as I was mentioning, biomechanical engineers, TASA can certainly refer anybody to a biomechanical engineer. I've used them in the past. Biomechanical engineers, the reason that I've used them is should you have a crash involving a commercial vehicle where you have a driver and a co-driver and maybe some other occupants in the commercial vehicle, you have a single vehicle crash, everybody's ejected, everybody is killed, and you have a question that becomes, okay, who was driving, suicided wear, and so on. Well, your biomechanical engineer, through their training, are able to look at the mechanics of the crash, look at the objects that are inside of the vehicle, and actually match up the injury pattern. They review the autopsy reports, look at the injury pattern, and based on the motion and so on, they're pretty much able to say, well, this person was driving, this person was seated in the right seat, and so on and so forth. So on occasion, I've had to use them. Civil engineers similarly worked a case where a vehicle, I believe this was in Indiana, a vehicle went over the side of a road. There was a significant drop-off. I don't recall specifically, but I know it was greater than 6 to 8 feet. The civil engineer informed me, unbeknownst to me, that according to the AASHTO standards, the state is required to have a guardrail in that particular location. So that opened up another little bit of a liability, bringing the state into that case as well. And as I mentioned, if you speak to your reconstructionist, he's pretty much going to be able to tell you, based on the elements of your particular case, hey, I think we need to get back to TASA and we need to bring in a biomechanical engineer or a civil engineer or what have you. Again, when choosing an expert, cost certainly is important. I typically charge a retainer up front, and I think you're going to find the same with most experts. Expedience, as I indicated, you need to get an expert that is available 24/7, that's going to be there when you need them. That's not going to give you, well, sorry, I'm busy, I can't get there until next week. Again, this evidence is crucial that we collect it as soon as possible. Knowledge of CV or commercial vehicle workings. Commercial vehicles are totally unique from passenger cars. You have, they work on the air brake system, you have dryers, you have all kinds of elements inside of that truck, and if you get an expert that doesn't really understand the workings, you're not going to have much of a case. Knowledge of FMCSR. What is that FMCSR? That's the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations are pretty much the Bible, the guidelines by which all commercial vehicles are on the roadway. It tells everything from the amount of lights they're required to have, the location of the lights, how quickly they are required to stop, so on and so forth. So the expert needs to have a knowledge of that book. Experience. You want to have somebody that has some experience not only in reconstruction, but in working these commercial vehicle cases. You need somebody that's had trial experience as well as been deposed. In my 28 years as a police officer, and since testifying as an expert in the private sector, I've probably been on the stand roughly 1,000 times, I would imagine. This is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, and you'll see on the front it says it's updated quarterly. You can save yourself a whole lot of money. Instead of buying this book on a quarterly basis, you can go to the internet and certainly download whatever you're looking for. For instance, commercial vehicle lighting, commercial vehicle braking, logs, and this kind of thing. So that's, again, that's going to save you some money, but you certainly you should have a knowledge of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. Another website that I recommend that you become familiar with is one called SaferSys. It's SaferSys.org. SaferSys, if you know the U.S. DOT number, and you'll notice that number on the side of every commercial vehicle on the road. That vehicle is registered through the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Division, and that number, you can look it up and get a snapshot of that company, find out how many power units they have, find out how many crashes their drivers have been involved in, their safety rating, and so on and so forth. So again, it can be very handy in a personal injury case involving a commercial vehicle. Difference between investigating or reconstructing a commercial vehicle crash and a passenger car, a lot of similarities. Photos, naturally, you're going to take photos in both, same thing, get photos from witnesses and so on. Interviews, similarly, you're going to interview the witnesses, again, sooner rather than later. In a passenger car, depending on the year, make, and model, you're going to want to try and get the EDR, which is known as the black box. EDRs are also called different things in passenger cars. Some are called SDMs. There are all kinds of different names, but in essence, it's a black box that records speed. It records a lot of different things depending, again, on the year, make, and model. The roadway evidence, same way with a passenger vehicle crash versus a commercial vehicle crash. You need to get out and collect the evidence as it relates to tire marks, gouges, etc. Tire marks and gouges are going to give you a good indication of the direction of travel of these vehicles, maybe pre-impact, but certainly post-impact. If you can match the damage profile on a vehicle to the gouges, you're going to be able to say for certain that after impact, this vehicle went this direction, it went at this angle, and that's going to help you in determining our next factor, which is a speed analysis. In passenger cars, quite often we can use what's called conservation of linear momentum. Commercial vehicles, just a little bit different animal. With a commercial vehicle, when you have the mass of the commercial vehicle, if it's greater than a 10-to-1 ratio of whatever it struck, you're not going to be able to use conservation of linear momentum, which means that you're going to have to rely on some other factors, such as that ECM that we're going to talk about. So again, commercial vehicle crashes, pretty much all the components of a vehicle crash, but you're also looking at the inspection of a tractor and a trailer. Think of that tractor and trailer as one unit. The brakes on the tractor and trailer work in conjunction with another when it comes to stopping that vehicle. If you have one and not the other, I certainly would not feel safe in telling a client that, well, it looks like all the brakes are functional, so I don't think braking was a factor. Let's make sure that we have both that tractor and the trailer, even if one or the other is not directly involved in the crash. We need to have them together at least at one point to inspect those brakes, if in fact braking is an issue in the crash, which it not all the time is. Brake force calculations, a totally different animal. Brake force calculations have to do with measuring the brake chambers, knowing what size brake chambers are on the commercial vehicles, looking at the air compressor, the air dryer, the dimensions of the rims, the brake pads, and so on. We'll be able to tell you exactly what percentage braking that vehicle had. Again, we're looking at Federal Motor Carrier safety regulations when it relates to a commercial vehicle, whereas we're looking pretty much at state law when it comes to violations in passenger cars. Driver's log, you're not going to find a driver's log in a passenger car. Commercial vehicles, they are required to have the driver's log. You're going to find not only a hard copy of the driver's log anymore, but you're also going to find an electronic version. As a matter of fact, I believe there's a new law coming out that's going to require that the drivers perform at least a certain percentage now of their log electronically. ECM download, again, is somewhat different than the passenger car. Qualcomm data is that electronic data that I'm kind of referring to as it relates to the driver's log. Qualcomm is a company that if you see a unit, a power unit, a tractor on the road, and it has a big white antenna, kind of a radar type thing on top of it, chances are it's being monitored by Qualcomm. These carriers use Qualcomm to track their units, and that's data that we find very, very important when it comes to reconstructing these crashes, because that data is going to give us GPS pinpoints of where that vehicle has been. We're going to be able to determine the speeds. We're going to be able to look at the data and say, hey, wait a minute, this data doesn't match up with the hard copy of their log. So Qualcomm is a valuable resource. And speaking of Qualcomm, case in 2010, Qualcomm was sued by Broadcom. There had been a commercial vehicle crash, and it was found that Qualcomm did not, in fact, conduct the appropriate searches for the electronic data, which was required, so they were found to be in violation of the rules of discovery. The ultimate fees and costs in that one ended up costing Qualcomm in excess of $8 million. So let's make sure that when we have a tractor-trailer accident, we find out if, in fact, we have a Qualcomm unit on that vehicle, and make sure that we send out the preservation letter. Post-crash inspection of the vehicle. Again, you need somebody that has a knowledge of mechanical components of a commercial motor vehicle. Just make sure that the driver didn't operate the vehicle in an unsafe condition, and it also prevents the operator from shifting blame to the mechanical condition of the vehicle. So you have your driver that says, hey, I hit the brakes and nothing happened. Well, if we conduct that mechanical inspection and understand the mechanics of the braking system and find out that, in fact, everything was operational, well, certainly it takes that blame back away from the mechanical aspects and puts it back on that driver. Mechanical components that we look at, these are just a few. The air compressor is under the hood. It supplies the air to our brake chambers. That's every brake chamber that stops that truck. We're going to look at the slack adjusters and the push rods. These are on the brake chambers, and they tell us again whether or not the brakes are in adjustment. The air dryer is an element that is under the hood again, that air goes from the air compressor to the air dryer. The air dryer removes some of the contaminants that flow from the air compressor into the brake chambers. So if your air dryer is clogged, you may have contaminated air going to those brakes. Therefore, you have brakes that are out of adjustment. We're going to look at relay valves, brake chambers. You have different chambers for steering axles versus drive axles. We're going to look at the lighting requirements, again, that are regulated by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. And we're going to look at loads. Every commercial vehicle is required to have a bill of lading. That bill of lading is going to tell us what, in fact, was on that particular vehicle, and it's going to give us a good indication of the weight and how that vehicle should have been loaded, and whether or not it was loaded properly, and whether that had any kind of effect on our crash, whether if it was loaded improperly, perhaps it wasn't able to stop properly because of the center of mass being off. So I'm here at the point in the presentation where we're open for any questions.
And could all the attendees please type the passcode that was given at the beginning of the presentation into the Q&A? The first question is, earlier you mentioned a website. Was it systemsys.com?
No, the website I mentioned is SAFER, S-A-F-E-R, as in a safe vehicle, SAFER, SYS.com. SaferSys, or excuse me, I'm sorry, it's .com or it's .org. I'm sorry, it's safersys.org.
Okay, thank you. And when did commercial vehicle ECMs start collecting data?
Good question. The ECMs essentially came into effect sometime in the early 90s. I know for sure that the Detroit diesel engines came into effect, the ECMs came into effect back in about 1997 and 1998. with the early ECMs, just like they are with the passenger car black boxes, you didn't get quite as much data as you do now anymore. The data you get now is several hundreds worth of technical data and pages.
Okay, and how do bus crashes differ from trucks?
Bus crashes, you asked?
Yes.
A lot of the buses, from what I understand, and you'll have to excuse me, I haven't worked a whole lot of bus crashes. I've worked a school bus crash. School bus crash that I worked had hydraulic brakes. I believe you'll find that some of the buses involved had more of the hydraulic brakes than the air brake system. So you're talking a different animal entirely in comparison with a tractor trailer commercial vehicle.
Okay, and how do you handle the interplay with traffic controls?
The interplay with traffic control, you asked?
Yes.
Okay. The only where I think that it's going is as a civilian now. When I receive a call regarding a commercial vehicle crash and get out to the scene, naturally the law enforcement police agencies have pretty much left the scene. I try to plan, depending on the busyness of the roadway, if I have to hire a department to assist me out there to block traffic, I will do that depending on the busyness of the road. If it's a crash that can wait until typically I find Sunday mornings are quiet on the interstates, and oftentimes I'll go out on a Sunday morning and map the scene. But it just depends on when the crash occurred. If it was a very recent crash, we need that evidence right away. I'll get out there right away. If it's something that can wait a few days until a Sunday, sometimes I'll just wait until that less busy day to get out there.
And is there a link for the Qualcomm system that you referenced?
No, not a link per se. I believe Qualcomm is located out of, if I'm not mistaken, out of Colorado. I believe that they can be looked up on the internet, and Qualcomm has all kinds of information. If we need to send a preservation letter, I believe it's just a phone call to Qualcomm to find out to whom the preservation letter needs to be addressed.
And how long will ECM data be available before it's destroyed or overwritten?
Very, very good question. We're looking at, there's a lot of ECM data, and I'm going to talk about that some more as the presentation goes on. But there are two particular aspects of ECM data that are very crucial in accident reconstruction. One of them will disappear as soon as the vehicle is turned back on and the brake is applied. That's called the last stop record. The other, the hard stop record, typically the computer will hold two of those, and generally that will stay there until the tractor trailer is put back into service and the next hard stop takes place.
Okay, and with respect to accident causation, what is the relationship between the loss of brakes, gross vehicle weight, and the vehicle's center of gravity?
Very good. As far as if we're looking at a center of gravity issue, a lot of times we're looking at rollovers. We're looking at a situation where if the trailer is not loaded properly, it's going to change the center of mass of that vehicle, and the propensity to roll is going to be significantly higher had it been loaded properly. Now, the brakes, certainly if the load is not secure and you have a hard stop, and if the brakes, in fact, are all adjusted and the load shifts, certainly that's going to create an issue again where the center of mass is going to change and the vehicle has a greater propensity to either roll or to lose control, to either jackknife or have trailer swing out, just depending on the direction the load happens to shift.
Okay, we're going to continue on with the presentation, but we will have a second Q&A at the end of the presentation.
Thank you for all the questions. I do appreciate it. Some of what we discussed here during the question and answer period is some items that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But when it comes to legal aspects of evidence collection, we want to avoid the spoliation issue. Spoliation as it relates to, most recently I've had situations where tractor-trailer accidents and one of the units, either the power unit or the trailer was not involved. So the company deemed it on their own to go ahead and release one or the other, which created an issue for our side, again, trying to determine whether or not we had brakes that were adjusted properly. So we want to try and, again, preserve that evidence by submitting the preservation letter and getting out there just as soon as possible to try and collect that evidence. Contamination, we want to avoid contaminating our evidence. As I indicated before, I've worked homicides, I've worked all kinds of cases, and I treat some of these serious commercial vehicle crashes as a homicide scene. I don't see any other way to look at it. You need to get out and collect that evidence and try and keep people from contaminating, or the weather from contaminating the evidence. Sometimes you have no control over that. But again, the sooner you get out there and collect the evidence, the better your case is going to be. So another way to avoid that spoliation issue is as soon as you find out prior to your litigation that you're going to have some evidence that you're going to need to do a preservation letter on, you need to actually plan for that electronic discovery in advance. You can make that request in writing that any of the relevant electronic evidence be preserved that has to do with the matter at issue. And one of the last things is that you make sure that all the experts, not only your own, but the other experts and consultants, understand that the physical evidence needs to be preserved on those units. It's not uncommon. I've been on cases where I've been at a salvage yard looking at a commercial vehicle. Both sides of the issue were present, experts were present, and happened to have an expert that decided they needed to remove, I believe it was some documentation from the vehicle. I believe it was wet, and they deemed it as their own and essentially took it without actually physically preserving it. So we want to make sure that all that preservation takes place and that both sides follow the same rules. Now, in that preservation letter, these are some of the things that we need to make sure are preserved. Those driver's logs for 6 months preceding the crash. And when I say driver's logs, again, I'm talking about not just the hard copy of the driver's logs, but any and all electronic driver's logs through the Qualcomm. Co-driver's logs the same way for the same period if, in fact, you have a co-driver in that particular unit. Every driver is required to have a qualification file by the carrier. So you want to request that the driver qualification file and any incident report involving the driver are maintained and preserved for your case. All 70-hour and other compliance audits of the driver and co-driver, if applicable. These are required by the Federal Motor Carrier safety standards. All trip receipts, weight tickets, bills of lading, and operational documents used to conduct log audits and verify log accuracy. Now, I talked about log accuracy, how the Qualcomm sometimes can be used track the location of that unit to verify whether or not your driver is in fact reporting accurately on his hard copy of the log. Your trip receipts and your trip receipts are also going to be an element that's going to assist in verifying that log, i.e., I mean, if they purchase gas in Cincinnati, Ohio, and they travel to St. Louis, and the time shows just 1 hour in between or something, you know you've got something's awry there. In addition, the preservation letter should make sure that you ask that the satellite tracking, the Qualcomm data information be preserved for 6 months prior to the crash. Any information contained in or retrieved from the onboard data records in the ECM units, email, other communications between the driver and dispatcher or carrier. You never know what you'll find. All maintenance records, pre-trip inspection reports, post-trip inspection reports, and annual inspection reports. Again, these are all required by the Federal Motor Carrier Standards, and I think what you're going to find quite often, the Federal Motor Carrier Standards don't say specifically this is the kind of form that you have to use in order to conduct your pre- or post-inspection reports. These are just the items that we want you to check. So they've left it up to each carrier to devise their own inspection reports, and I believe what you'll find in a lot of instances, even though they may fill them out properly, it's not uncommon to see the driver just simply take a walk around the truck, take his stick, hit the tire, see if there's air in it. He's not measuring the air, but that's pretty much his pre- or post-inspection report. There's a lot more required, but a lot of times I think that's all you'll see them do. You want to make sure, you know, main thing is that the tractor trailer itself or relevant portions of that equipment that played a role in the crash are preserved. And again, that goes back to the tractor and the trailer. Make sure that those are preserved. Again, I know you need to get an expert out there as soon as possible so that carrier can get that unit back on the road, but preserve the whole thing, because we need to look at, if again we have a braking issue, we need to look at the whole thing as one package. Now, I don't know if I didn't hear, I guess my audio's off, but if you heard the audible alarm in the, that's a Volvo, as you probably read. That's a brand new Volvo on a testing grounds. I believe Volvo does have some of their power units have this braking system intact or in their units. This braking system has to do with essentially sensors that detect that the vehicle is traveling at such and such a rate per second, and that it's coming upon another object too quick, and it automatically brakes the unit. I certainly would not have wanted to have been that test driver in the passenger car, but they clearly have all the faith in the world in that braking system, and hopefully we'll see that braking system in a lot of other commercial vehicles as technology advances. Now the question becomes, could the driver stop and avoid a crash? So we have a chart here. This is based on some studies that were conducted by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I'm not sure how long ago these studies were conducted, but in a nutshell, we have a vehicle, all these vehicles, say for instance, are traveling at 60 miles per hour. They're on a dry roadway surface, and the chart indicates how long it's going to take each vehicle to come to a complete stop, and that's punching the brake. With cars traveling at 60 miles per hour, for instance, we have the vertical line that goes down that shows it's going to stop in about 180 feet. Buses in roughly 200, 220 feet. Your loaded tractor trailer is going to take about 240 feet to stop from 60 miles per hour. Your loaded trucks, and that's just your double axle trucks, take even longer. You're talking about 250 to 260 feet. Empty trucks, even longer, and that's your tractor trailers that are empty. You're looking at roughly 315 feet. And your bobtail trailers take the longest. And again, that's 330 feet roughly in order to stop from 60 miles per hour. The next time you're on the expressway and you're in the center lane and you need to get over into the right turn lane to get off the exit, make sure that you don't get too close to that commercial vehicle in front of them because just remember, they don't stop very fast. Speaking of braking, the Federal Motor Carrier, and you'll notice in the first line here, I've got a lot of numbers, 0.435 Gs of braking and 0.33 Gs and so on and so forth. But in a nutshell, what the Federal Motor Carrier regulations require is that a commercial vehicle, if he's traveling at 20 miles per hour, be able to come to a stop in 40 feet. That's the whole thing in a nutshell. And I think they're trying to make that even stricter as time goes on. Now, your expected stopping distances for your typical 18-wheeler traveling at 65 miles per hour, when all 10 brakes are in perfect adjustment, he's looking at stopping in about 250 feet. If all 10 brakes are just within the adjustment limit, 270 feet, and at the mandated minimum, you're looking at that truck not stopping until 324 feet down the road. So now that same truck doing 65 miles an hour again with improperly adjusted brakes, if he just has two brakes that are minimally out of adjustment, or 2 out of 10, or the 20% rule, that distance increases to 315 feet. With two brakes out of adjustment, totally out of adjustment, not just minimally, but totally, you're looking at distance of 340 feet to stop. With 3 brakes out of adjustment, 400 feet to stop. And if he's got just 4 brakes, remember, he's got 10 brakes, so he's got 6 others working, but it's just not enough. You're still looking at a distance of 480 feet for that commercial vehicle to be able to stop. And speaking of brake efficiency, that brake efficiency is most often caused by poor maintenance or improper brake adjustment. I mentioned earlier that the air compressor is a source of energy. That's the air that goes into the brake chambers. And it's also the primary source of contamination in that system. So again, if the air dryer and other components in that commercial vehicle, once they get old and if they're not changed or cleaned, you're going to find contamination in that air, and you're going to find brakes that are out of adjustment. And what happens when the brakes are out of adjustment, we just saw on the last slide, it's going to take that vehicle a lot longer to stop. Commercial vehicle inspection form, this is what I typically use. I'm looking at every brake chamber. I'm looking at the slack adjusters. I'm looking at, when it mentions friction value, I'm looking at the friction value of the brake pad on the commercial vehicle axle itself. Drum radius, tire rolling radius is a figure that we acquired through the drum radius. The push rod stroke and the vertical weight. Every single axle, we look at these and we are able to determine the efficiency of the braking system on that commercial vehicle. So I talked about earlier short-lived and long-lived evidence. We have a commercial vehicle crash in the top left picture where unfortunately a passenger car got in between them. Needless to say, you're going to find a lot of roadway evidence at a scene like that. So after they've cleared the scene, you see we have fluid, we have debris, we have tire marks, we have all kinds of stuff on the roadway. Naturally, days down the road, the only thing you're going to see is maybe a trace of the fluid on the roadway. Your tire marks essentially are oil that's been raised to the surface of the road from the friction of the tires. So where does that oil go after so long a period of time? It goes back down into the roadway surface. So unless we document that evidence, it's going to be gone by the time we get there. One of the other issues we look at is a lighting issue. This was a case that I worked that involved a commercial vehicle backing across a roadway late at night. I believe it was a 55 mile per hour zone. The trailer had an object on the back. It was a flatbed, and he had a cover over the object. Well, unfortunately, what he didn't account for was that cover actually covered the reflective tape alongside that trailer. So as our poor driver came along, they had no idea the trailer was there, and they ended up going underneath. So we had a lighting issue, and we had the reflective tape issue, all kinds of issues in that particular case. So let's get into the ECMs here before we lose much more time. What is the ECM? It's similar to the black box, as I indicated. Its primary purpose is to make sure that the engine, diesel, is operated within established parameters, and its purpose is to record and log pertinent data needed by the technician for the service and repair of the diesel engine. So remember, we've got technicians that are actually making adjustments in these ECM units, adjustments by means of going into the computers and setting, for instance, the governor on the truck. Just an example, they set the governor, say, at 72 miles an hour. They're supposed to set the time and the date on the ECM. There's a lot of other things that they're supposed to set on the computer, but that's pretty much what the ECM was originally for. And as I mentioned during our Q&A session, the biggest things that we're looking at in these ECM records out of that 115 pages are two things. We're looking at what's called the last stop record, and this reports 1 minute and 44 seconds of data before the vehicle came to a stop and 15 seconds of data following the stop. Needless to say, hopefully there's not going to be a lot of data in that after stop, but you never know. And it records only one last stop. So as I indicated, this is a very temporary type of data. If that commercial vehicle is involved in a crash and there's not a hard brake, all you've got is a last stop record. And as soon as that record driver starts the tractor back up to tow it or what have you and applies the brake, your last stop record is now changed. So that data that you had, that 1 minute and 44 seconds of prior, which may have shown the speed that tractor trailer was traveling, again, almost 2 minutes worth prior to him stopping, that's all gone. So that last stop record is, we don't find that too often. Most of the time we find what's called the hard brake record. The ECM holds two of those brake events. It's a sudden change in speed, which is set by the technician, which is usually, if your commercial vehicle stops, say there's a change of 7 miles per hour deceleration in 1 second, it's going to record a hard brake event. And in that hard brake event, you're going to get 1 minute of engine data. And you'll see in the next slide what kind of data that we're going to acquire. And again, it's going to record 2 hard brake events. So as soon as you get another hard brake event, the older hard brake event is going to fall off of that computer and no longer be accessible. So this is the kind of data that we can expect to pull off of an ECM. The day and time of occurrence. And remember, if the technician did not set the clock on that ECM properly, sometimes the events you're looking at, the date and the time may not match up. So you have to look at other things in your investigation to show that, yes, this matches my crash, so this is our event that we're looking for. It's going to show the vehicle speed, and again, that vehicle speed is going to be up to 59 seconds before the hard brake. The engine speed, which is the RPMs of the engine. It's going to show whether the brake was actually applied and at what point. It's going to show at what point the clutch was applied. It's going to show the load of the engine in percentage, whether that tractor was really working hard at the time it was braked. It's going to show the throttle position, meaning the percentage of how far down that gas pedal was pressed, 50%, 75%, what have you. It's going to show whether or not that vehicle was in cruise control, and it's going to look at diagnostic codes as well. Diagnostic codes may give you an indication that maybe there was some kind of a mechanical issue involved, and a technician would have to look at the diagnostic codes most of the time and tell you what those are. This is a one page of a hard brake event, and I apologize, it's probably a little smaller than I would like it to have been, but we're looking at the top line. It says minus 59. That's 59 seconds prior to that hard brake event. It tells us the vehicle speed was at 46.5 miles per hour. The engine speed, or the RPMs, were 1,055. You see zeros all the way down both columns with the brake and the clutch. That tells us that neither the brake nor the clutch was engaged at 59, from that 59 down to 46 seconds. It's going to tell us the engine load, again, the percentage. So this guy was probably going uphill. He's got a load of 100%. And again, throttle, 76%. So he had his foot pretty heavy on that accelerator. Cruise control and diagnostic codes, all zeros. So the vehicle was not in cruise control, and we had no diagnostic issues during that particular 13 seconds of data that we copied on that hard brake event. That's kind of what we're looking for in a crash reconstruction. And that is it. One other thing I should also mention, there are a number of engines. Even if you have a Freightliner tractor, that does not necessarily mean that you have a Detroit diesel engine. You may have a Cummins engine. You may have what's called a power spec engine. There are two companies that manufacture engines, and those are Mack and Volvo, that do not allow anybody but two companies throughout the United States to download the ECMs from their trucks. They look at it as proprietary data and have given rights to only two companies to do that. I wish I could say that I was one of them, but I'm not. But the other engines are Detroit diesel, Cummins, power spec. There's a lot of different engines that can be in that Freightliner. So again, any questions at the end of our presentation here?
And could all the attendees please type the passcode into the Q&A once again? First question is there any difference in calculating the feet per second of a commercial vehicle as opposed to a passenger car?
No, not necessarily. When you're talking, for instance, 60 miles an hour, you're talking roughly 80.88 feet per second. That does remain the same. It's just a matter of how long are they going to be at that particular rate of speed. Naturally, braking, one thing I should mention is if we don't have the tractor and trailer, we can use a generic percentage of braking. Typically, your tractor trailer braking is roughly 70% of whatever the roadway surface drag factor is. So if you have a roadway that's a 0.7 drag factor, you multiply that times 0.7, you end up with a 0.49 drag factor for a commercial vehicle. The higher the drag factor, the quicker the vehicle is going to stop. The lower the drag factor, the longer it's going to take to stop. So you see why it takes these vehicles much longer to stop.
Okay, and do you find the no-zone charts, diagrams, and videos from the FMCSA helps to show the blind spots of commercial vehicles or not?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question, Emily.
Do you find that the no-zone charts, diagrams, and videos from the FMCSA helps to show the blind spots of commercial vehicles or not?
Not the blind spots you said of commercial vehicles?
Yes.
No, not particularly. I prefer actually getting up into the tractor. When we're talking blind spots, I think we're talking maybe I'm talking about something different, but I prefer to get up into a tractor trailer and actually take photographs of the blind spots as it relates to the view of the driver, if that is in fact what we're referring to.
Okay, and this is going to be our last question, but we can have Steve answer them for you later on and get back to you on those. So the last question is, do you really think that 6 months of satellite data and logs need to be preserved, and why so long?
I do. When you're looking at a serious crash where a number of people could have been killed, I feel that we're looking at a history. Every time I worked a homicide case, I'm looking at the history of the defendant. In this case, I'm looking at the history of, chances are, this driver is probably the sole driver of this unit. I'm going to look at what kind of history he has. It's going to tell me the highest speeds he has achieved. It's going to tell me a lot of information as far as whether he has bypassed the governor, which they're able to do. It's going to give me a lot of information, and the further back I go, the more information I stand of finding that may be helpful in my particular case, yes.
Okay, thank you for answering those. In addition to being your best source for testifying and consulting experts, TASA also offers e-discovery and forensic solutions, free interactive webinars, cybersecurity, and research reports on expert witnesses, such as the Challenge History Report 2.0, the Professional Sanction Certs, and the Expert Profile 360. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for attending, and most especially Stephen Ashton for his time and effort in creating this presentation. If you would like to speak with Mr. Ashton, or if you would like to speak with a TASA representative regarding an expert witness for a case that you are working on, please contact TASA at 1-800-523-2319. Thank you all again for attending, and have a great day, everyone. This concludes our program for today.
Thank you, Emily.